What drives a father to murder his own children? This is the terrifying story of Daryl Holton, a Gulf War veteran whose name became forever linked with one of the most heartless family murders in American history. Holton had served his country. To neighbors, he seemed like an ordinary man trying to rebuild his life after divorce. But behind closed doors, he was drowning in bitterness. Custody battles with his ex-wife Crystal had fueled his anger. And on November 30th, 1997, that anger exploded in a way no one could have imagined. That night, Holton picked up his three sons, 12-year-old Stephen, 10-year-old Brent, and 6-year-old Eric. With them was Kayla, the 4-year-old daughter of his ex-wife. To the children, it must have seemed like just another weekend with Dad. But Holton had other plans. He drove them not to a shopping mall, not to a family outing, but to a dimly lit auto garage. There he lined them up. One by one, he raised his rifle and shot them at point-blank range. The sound of gunfire replaced the innocent laughter of children. Within minutes, all four lay dead. Then, in a move that shocked investigators even further, Holton calmly drove himself to the police station. He walked in, confessed to killing his children, and waited to be arrested. No chase, no remorse, just chilling calm. The trial revealed a man who admitted everything, refused to beg for mercy, and even declined to appeal his death sentence. Holton said killing his children was justice in a custody dispute. 10 years later, on September 12, 2007, he became the first person in nearly half a century to be executed in Tennessee's electric chair. His final words, just two chilling words: "I'm fine. Classification: mass murderer. Characteristics: parricide, Gulf War, veteran. Number of victims: 4. Date of murder: November 30th, 1997. Date of arrest: same-day surrenders. Date of birth: 1962. Victims profile: Stephen Edward Holton, 12. Brent Holton, 10. Eric Holton, 6. Kayla Marie Holton, 4. His 4 children. Method of murder: shooting Russian SKS semi-automatic assault rifle. Location: Bedford County, Tennessee, USA. Status: executed by electrocution in Tennessee on September 12, 2007. According to the confession of Holton, a Gulf War veteran, he lined up his 4 children at a uncle's auto repair garage and shot them with an SKS assault rifle, 2 at a time. It was the first time in several months Holton had seen his children aged 12, 10, 6, and 4. He told them they were going Christmas shopping instead, stopping at the garage. After the murders, Holton walked into the Shelbyville Police Department and announced what he had done. Responding officers found the bodies of the 4 small children along with pipe bombs that Holton said were intended for his wife and her home. There was a long history between the two of domestic and custody disputes. Citations: State v. Holton, 126, SWW 3, 845-10, 2004, direct appeal. Final, special meal. Holton ate what was served to the other inmates: riblets on a bun, mixed vegetables, baked beans, white cake with white icing, and iced tea. Final words. Asked if he had any last words, Holton replied, yeah, 2 words I do. Daryl Holton was convicted of 4 counts of premeditated first-degree murder for killing his 4 children in 1997. All 4 children, 12-year-old Stephen Edward Holton, 10-year-old Brent Holton, 6-year-old Eric Holton, and 4-year-old Kayla Marie Holton, were shot to death with a Russian SKS semi-automatic assault rifle, police said. Kayla was not Holton's daughter, but he considered her his child. Holton, who had been involved in a custody fight with his ex-wife, turned himself in at the police station and said he had killed the children. They were found shot to death in rooms Holton had been living in behind an auto repair shop owned by his uncle. Holton and his ex-wife had married in 1984. Holton was in the Army at the time and was deployed to Germany. The couple had 2 sons during the Germany assignment. Holton was then stationed in Georgia for a time before volunteering for service in Saudi Arabia. His family remained in the U.S., and their 3rd son was born during this time. Around this time, Holton's paychecks began to be routed incorrectly, and his wife experienced some serious financial problems. Additionally, she left the children alone overnight while out at a dance hall. Police and Children's Services representatives greeted her upon her return. She was allowed to retain custody of the children, but voluntarily placed them in the care of Daryl Holton's father in Tennessee and went to live with a friend in Georgia. Holton secured an emergency leave of absence when he learned of these problems, but could not resolve the problems in the marriage, and eventually returned to the Middle East and left the children in his father's custody. Their mother lived for a time in Indiana, then South Carolina. Upon his return to Georgia in 1992, Holton obtained a divorce from his wife on grounds of desertion and gained custody of the children. He obtained an honorable discharge from the Army and moved to Tennessee. Holton took the children to South Carolina to visit their mother 2 or 3 times a month. In 1993, Holton's ex-wife gave birth to Kayla, who was the result of a one-night stand with a black man. Holton accepted Kayla as his own child and suggested that she be given his last name. During the pregnancy, the couple began living together again. They did not remarry, but lived together as a family again for about 2 years. However, Ms. Holton was drinking very heavily during this period, and this resulted in some violent fights with her husband. She eventually moved out of the apartment and went to a shelter with the children. They then moved into public housing in Murfreesboro. When Holton finally learned of their location, he began visiting the kids daily. Eventually, the court awarded him weekend visitation. He told his ex-wife that he was concerned about the crime rate where she lived, and also complained to her about the lack of housekeeping and the condition of the apartment. In 1995, an incident occurred where Holton had the children for the weekend and upon returning them, refused to let them get out of the car. He told his ex-wife that she had to get into the car in order to see them. She said she did not see any weapons, but got the impression that Holton was armed. She refused to get in the car, and Holton drove away, saying that she was going to regret it. She immediately called the police, and Holton heard the report on a police scanner in his car, so he drove to the police station and surrendered the children. Thereafter, Holton periodically threatened his ex-wife that she would regret it if she ever took his children away from him. Holton continued visitation with the children until the late summer or early fall of 1997, at which time his ex-wife obtained an order of protection against Holton and moved to a new address. Holton was not informed of the move and did not see the children again until November 30th, 1997, the day he murdered them. Ms. Holton had begun living with a man who had a young daughter. On Thanksgiving, she called Holton and told him that the children missed him and wanted to see him. They made arrangements for him to pick them up on Sunday, November 30th, and return them by 9:30 that evening. On Sunday, the children appeared to be excited about the scheduled visit with their father. Brent drew his father a picture inscribed with the words, "From Brent and Kayla, I love you, Daddy." Also, when the Holtons met at the Walmart at 3:00 p.m., the children ran to Holton and hugged him. He returned his children's embraces. However, Ms. Holton recalled that Holton appeared detached or numb. After leaving her children with Holton, their mother never saw them alive again. At approximately 9:44 p.m. On November 30th, 1997, Holton walked into the lobby of the Shelbyville Police Department and informed the dispatcher that he wished to report a homicide ×4. The dispatcher testified at trial that Holton appeared to be calm and indeed displayed no emotion. She asked him to wait in the lobby, and because there were no officers present at the police station, radioed for assistance. An officer testified at trial that he was driving into the parking lot of the police station when he overheard the dispatcher on the radio requesting assistance. When the officer approached Holton, he stated his name, address, and birth date, and again indicated that he wished to report 4 homicides. When the officer further inquired how Holton had learned of the homicides, he responded that he had killed his 4 children. Holton then spontaneously stood and placed his hands behind his back in order to allow the officer to handcuff him. Holton continued talking, explaining to the officer that he had murdered his children because his wife and the Department of Human Services had withheld them for several months without permitting him visitation. Holton also informed the officer that he had killed the children in his uncle's automobile repair garage with an SKS semi-automatic rifle and indicated that both the murder weapon and the bodies were still inside the garage. He also told police he had made some bombs that were located in his apartment. Police found 5 incendiary devices that were described as similar to Molotov cocktails. Holton had planned to return to Murfreesboro after murdering his children and to basically shoot the young daughter of his ex-wife's current boyfriend, in addition to firebombing his ex-wife's new residence. For the purpose of firebombing his ex-wife's residence, he prepared 5 incendiary devices or firebombs. He also ascertained his ex-wife's new address using a telephone book, street maps, and the number that he had retrieved from the caller ID unit on his telephone. On Sunday, November 30th, Holton retrieved his children from his ex-wife at a Walmart in Murfreesboro. He recalled that Ms. Holton was dressed nicely. She was wearing makeup. She said she was happy, and that did not make me happy. He also related that his children all came up and hugged me. Kayla just wouldn't let go of me. As many times that I hadn't seen them for a while, and she grabbed me and she wouldn't let me go. Notwithstanding his children's obvious joy at reuniting with their father, Holton never reconsidered his plan to murder them. Holton took his children to a McDonald's restaurant to eat dinner and to an amusement park or arcade before driving them to his uncle's garage. He noted to police that he had to play along to avoid any suspicion on the children's part. At the garage, Holton showed the children several motors and permitted them to play with some of the tools. Holton also recalled, "We just told each other we missed each other." Finally, at approximately 7:00 p.m. or 7:30 p.m., Holton left Eric and Kayla playing in a front bay of the garage with an electric drill and a hammer, and lead Stephen and Brent to the rear bay where he had earlier hidden the SKS rifle. In the rear bay, Holton indicated to his older sons that he had something for them. He then instructed them to close their eyes and stand in a line facing away from him, with Stephen in front and the shorter Brent behind. Holton cautioned, "Don't peek," before removing the SKS rifle from its hiding place, kneeling behind the children and aiming the rifle. Holton explained that he positioned the children to enable him to pierce their hearts with a single shot. When he fired the first shot, the barrel of the rifle was angled upward and touching Brent's back. Holton conceded that he used multiple shots to ensure that I killed them both, and recalled that he covered their bodies with a tarpaulin to conceal them from their younger siblings. Holton next brought Eric and Kayla to the rear bay again, indicating that he had something for them. The 2 children evidently had not heard any gunshots and inquired about their older brothers. In response, Holton positioned them in a line as he had their brothers place their hands over their eyes and instructed them not to peek before kneeling behind them and firing the rifle into Kayla's back. Both children were struck by the first bullet, and Holton recalled firing his weapon at least one more time into Kayla's chest. Holton placed Kayla's and Eric's bodies with their older brothers underneath the tarpaulin, squared away the area, and washed his hands. Holton noted to police that there was no enjoyment to the murders at all. After murdering his children, Holton prepared to execute the next phase of his plan, i.e., the murder of Kiki and the firebombing of his ex-wife's residence. Holton reloaded the SKS rifle and placed the murder weapon and the 5 firebombs inside the car that he previously had parked outside. He also checked out the entrance of the shop to see if there was anything amiss, if anyone could have seen me. Moreover, he was listening to a police scanner to see if there had been any reports of gunshots or anything. He then began to drive toward Murfreesboro, but soon decided that he did not have enough time to execute the remainder of his plan. Accordingly, he returned to his uncle's garage. Holton noted that at the garage he had difficulty looking at his children's bodies. He considered committing suicide but ultimately resolved to surrender to the police. In explaining his decision to curtail his original plan, Holton noted, "I planned a lot of different scenarios and chose the one that time permitted. I was constantly subtracting, going over what options were left." Holton also observed, "I had done what I wanted to do. I wanted to shock my ex-wife to death. I was done. I was done." As to his decision to forego suicide, Holton added that the murders were the culmination of a lot of work, and people would come up with their own conclusions if I had killed myself. This is only one part of the story of what happened here. This is gruesome. This is awful. But it's only part of it. This has been going on for a long time. And if you're going to have a chance of understanding this, then you're going to have to talk to somebody that was involved. And I'm the only one that was involved that's still living. Holton concluded that he loved his children, but conceded that he would have difficulty convincing anyone of his love. He felt no remorse or regret for murdering his children. The state also presented the testimony of a consulting forensic pathologist and assistant medical examiner for Bedford County. The pathologist testified that he performed autopsies on Holton's 4 children, and he described the findings relating to each child in turn. First, Harlan related that 10-year-old Brent Holton died as a result of multiple gunshot wounds to the chest. Specifically, the doctor discovered 2 contact gunshot wound entrances in Brent's posterior chest or back and 2 corresponding exit wounds in Brent's anterior chest. The pathologist opined that the contact entry gunshot wounds and the corresponding exit wounds were consistent with a scenario in which a person knelt down behind Brent Holton, pointing the gun in an upward angle, and pulled the trigger. The doctor further noted that the wounds occurred in very close time proximity. Finally, the pathologist recounted that he also discovered 1 re-entry gunshot wound in Brent's anterior chest or front right shoulder area. He explained that a re-entry gunshot wound is caused by a bullet which passed through an intermediate target or bounced off of something prior to striking a person's body. He posited that one of the bullets causing the contact entry gunshot wounds and the corresponding exit wounds may have ricocheted off the concrete floor of the garage and re-entered Brent's body. He recovered the bullet from the child's body. The pathologist next testified that 12-year-old Stephen Holton died as a result of multiple gunshot wounds to the chest and abdomen. Specifically, he discovered 1 re-entry gunshot wound in Stephen's posterior chest or back. The doctor reiterated that a re-entry gunshot wound is one caused by a bullet that has either gone through some intermediate target or been deflected. A corresponding exit wound was located in Stephen's anterior chest. The doctor confirmed that the wounds were consistent with someone kneeling, holding a gun at an angle upward, shooting through Brent, that bullet passing through his body and entering Stephen's, and then still having enough force and velocity to pass through. The pathologist continued that the same bullet inflicted a grazed gunshot wound to Stephen's chin and nose. The pathologist further noted a contact gunshot wound to Stephen's anterior chest and abdomen and a corresponding exit wound. Finally, he attested to entry and exit gunshot wounds to Stephen's right hand. As to the 4-year-old Kayla Holton, he testified that she too died as a result of multiple gunshot wounds. Specifically, Kayla suffered a contact entry gunshot wound to the posterior chest or back and a corresponding exit wound. The doctor confirmed that the wounds were consistent with a scenario in which a person knelt behind Kayla, held a gun at an upward angle with the barrel touching her back and pulled the trigger. Additionally, the doctor observed another entry gunshot wound to Kayla's anterior chest and a corresponding partial exit wound. He testified that these wounds were consistent with a scenario in which the child is standing up, shooter is kneeling down, shoots her in the back, she falls down, falls on her back. She is lying front up on concrete floor. Then the shooter stands over her with a gun and goes bang. The doctor retrieved an extremely deformed bullet and smaller lead fragments from Kayla's body. Lastly, the pathologist testified that the 6-year-old Eric Holton died as a result of multiple gunshot wounds to his chest and abdomen. Specifically, the doctor recorded 4 entry gunshot wounds to Eric's posterior chest or back, at least one of which was possibly a re-entry gunshot wound. He noted that he was unable to determine whether the wounds were caused by 3 or 4 bullets. He explained that if a bullet first passed through another person, the projectile might have split in 2 and inflicted 2 separate wounds to Eric's back. Eric also suffered 2 exit wounds to his anterior chest and abdomen, one of which was extremely large and likely resulted from more than 1 bullet. Finally, Eric suffered a gunshot wound to his right wrist. The pathologist concluded that Eric's wounds were consistent with a scenario in which he was standing in front of Kayla when she was shot. The shooter was kneeling down. He fired a shot through Kayla's back. Eric had been told not to peek. He was told to close his eyes and place his hands over his eyes. He recovered 1 bullet and several bullet fragments from Eric's body. The jury imposed a death sentence for each offense. Daryl Keith Holton. In a twisted attempt to resolve a child custody fight on November 30th, 1997, Daryl Keith Holton shot his 3 children and his ex-wife's 4-year-old daughter and surrendered to police. After the killing, Holton, who lived in Shelbyville, Tennessee, went to the police station and confessed. He said he killed the kids because he was afraid he would never gain custody of his 3 sons. He also told police he had made some bombs that were in his apartment. Investigators don't know why he made the bombs. It all just built up and he snapped, his cousin Keisha Leverett said. He's always been a very quiet man, Moody, but there was never any indication of this. He was very concerned about his children. The children, Stephen 13, Brent 10 and Eric 7 and Kayla 4 were shot to death with a Russian SKS semi-automatic assault rifle, police said. Kayla was not Holton's daughter, but he considered her his child, Leverett said. The children thought they were going Christmas shopping when Holton picked them up on November 30, 1997. Instead, They stopped by the auto body repair shop where he worked. There, 4-year-old Kayla, ex-wife Chrysel Holton's daughter, by another man, wrote a letter asking Santa Claus to bring her a Tickle Me Elmo doll for Christmas. Then police said Holton lined the kids up and shot them from the back. Not satisfied with the carnage, Holton went looking for his former wife and her boyfriend, but could not find them. Police said, then turned himself in. Holton, 35, was born in Shelbyville, but moved often during his childhood because his stepfather was in the military, relatives said. He worked in the repair shop the last 3 years, but lived in public housing until moving into the shop earlier this year. An Army veteran who served in the Gulf War, Daryl and his former wife divorced about 4 years ago. Chrysel, the ex-wife, allowed the children to visit Daryl so they could go Christmas shopping. Although he visited the kids regularly, she had kept the children away from him for 2.5 months after filing a protective order because he beat the crap out of me. She said he loved the children, especially Kayla, even though he wasn't the girl's biological father. All I could be thinking about is what could possibly be going through their minds, the expressions on their face when they realized what he was going to do, she said tearfully. On June 16, 1999, the infanticidal dad was sentenced to death for killing the 4 children. Holton refused to let anyone defend him. Just a short story here from Shelbyville 10. Daryl Holton was kept away from his children by his wife Crystal Holton because she said that he was abusive. I think that he probably was, but once she filed for a protective order against him, he snapped completely. Holton picked Crystal Holton's 4 kids, 3 of them were to him, up on November 30, 1997. The children thought they were going Christmas shopping. Instead, they stopped by the auto body repair shop where he worked. At the shop, 4-year-old Kayla, Chrysel Holton's daughter by another man, wrote a letter asking Santa Claus to bring her a Tickle Me Elmo doll for Christmas. If you know where most stories go, then I would guess that you know that she didn't get one. Then Holton shot each child from the back with a Russian-made semi-automatic assault weapon. He then stacked the bodies on top of one another in the garage, then placed a tarp over the bodies, which is how police found Kayla, Stephen 12, Eric 6, and Brent 10. Holton went looking for his former wife and her boyfriend to finish the job, but being such a pathetic individual, he could not find them. Then for some reason I don't understand at all, he turned himself into police. During his trial, his lawyer amusingly argued that Holton was a caring father. It was just that he was severely depressed at the time of the slayings. Police officers said he told them he was afraid he would never gain custody of the children. A jury only deliberated 1 hour in finding Daryl Keith Holton guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder. I know that the state were seeking the death penalty, but don't know if they got it or not, as I haven't heard any news since he was found guilty. Nashville. 10. AP, a former soldier convicted of killing his 3 sons and their half-sister with an assault rifle, became the first inmate executed in the electric chair in Tennessee since 1960. Daryl Holton, 45, was pronounced dead at 1:25 a.m. CDT Wednesday. Prison warden Ricky Bell asked Holton if he had any last words. He mumbled something inaudibly, and Bell asked him to repeat what he said. Holton replied, "2 words I do." Prison officials then placed a wet sponge and metal plate on Holton's head. During the process, Holton kept his eyes closed. As officials used a towel to wipe away water from the sponge, Holton said, "Don't worry about it." Holton chose the electric chair over the state's preferred execution method of lethal injection. Under Tennessee law, death row inmates can choose if their crimes were committed before 1999. Even though the state had not performed an electrocution in nearly 47 years, the execution occurred without any serious delays or mistakes. A black shroud was placed over Holton's head, and a cable was connected to the bottom of the chair. Around 1:16 a.m. CDT, a 20-second shock was administered. Holton's back straightened and his hips moved up out of the chair before he slumped back. After a 15-second pause, Holton was given a second shock that lasted 15 seconds. He was pronounced dead seconds later. Holton, a Gulf War veteran, had confessed to the 1997 killings, saying he lined up the children at his uncle's auto repair garage and shot them two at a time. Holton told police that he killed the children because his ex-wife hadn't let him see them for several months, and that he had intended to kill his ex-wife and himself, but instead turned himself in. After the execution, a statement was read on behalf of the mother of the children, Crystal Holton. "Today all the anger, hatred, and a long time of nightmares can finally leave me. It will be replaced by all the sweet, innocent, wondrous love that only a child can give. And I am blessed that I have and will always have that love times 4. Daryl Holton came within a day of execution a year ago before a federal appeals court issued a stay. He was among 4 death row inmates whose executions were postponed in February when Governor Phil Bredesen placed a 90-day death penalty moratorium. Bredesen had cited a number of problems with the state's execution guidelines, including a jumble of conflicting instructions that mixed lethal injection instructions with those for the electric chair. The Correction Department completed the revision of its procedures in March. The moratorium was allowed to expire and the 4 executions were rescheduled. A group of about 80 attorneys petitioned the state's Supreme Court on Tuesday to stop the electrocution, saying the execution method was cruel and unusual punishment. But the court rejected the petition. Considering both the circumstances of this case and the relevant legal precedent, we decline to exercise our supervisory authority to withdraw the order of execution, the court said. Holton, who for the most part refused to file appeals in his case, had no other legal challenges. On November 30, 1997, Holton told the 4 children, Stephen 12, Brent 10, Eric 6, and their half-sister Kayla 4, that they were going Christmas shopping in Shelbyville, a small town about 50 miles south of Nashville. Nearly 5 hours later, Holton walked into the Shelbyville Police Department and confessed to shooting the children. Holton has said he suffered from severe depression when he committed the murders. His lawyers maintain he has a long history of mental illness and may suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder from his military service in the 1991 Gulf War. Holton's spiritual advisor, Dixie Gamble, had been visiting him daily and said he was at peace. "He's not nervous," she said before the execution. "He's very clear, very focused." Tennessee Department of Corrections spokeswoman Dorinda Carter said Holton didn't request a specific last meal, but ate what was served to other inmates. A sandwich mixed vegetables, baked beans, iced tea, and white cake. Carter said a decision on an autopsy will be left up to Tennessee's medical examiner. Before the execution, about 40 people, all death penalty opponents, gathered outside Riverbend Maximum Security Institution. Some sat in lawn chairs, and others sipped coffee, while a few read Bible passages to themselves. One man sang while playing an acoustic guitar. Amy Staples, a member of the Tennessee Coalition to Abolish State Killing, said the group opposes the death penalty, no matter how gruesome the crime. "It's a lousy law and it's bad public policy," she said. James Staub, who said his mother Patricia was murdered in Georgia when he was 12, said people's first reaction to crime is rage. But you have to be able to forgive people, he said. If I were to support the death penalty, I would be taking life from someone else's family, just as someone took life from my family. Before Holton, convicted rapist William Tynes died in Tennessee's electric chair on November 7, 1960, 09-10-07. Shelbyville 10. On Sunday, November 30, 1997, at about 9:45 p.m., Daryl Keith Holton walked into the Shelbyville Police Department. Holton, 36, calmly told the dispatcher he wanted to report a crime, homicide times 4. The former Army sergeant admitted he was the perpetrator. The victims were his 3 sons, ages 12 to 10 and 6, and the boy's younger half-sister, a 4-year-old who Holton told authorities he loved as if she were his flesh and blood. He said cops would find the bodies in the auto repair shop on North Jefferson Street where he worked and had lived for about 4 months in a makeshift apartment. The children would be found stacked beneath a tarp, oldest on the bottom, youngest on top, Holton reported. And it was so. Ex-wife cited as motive. His ex-wife was the motive for the brutality, Holton told detectives who interviewed him long into the night after he made his startling confession. Crystal Holton had not allowed him to see all the children since September of that year. She had secured an order of protection after he assaulted her. The couple's marriage stable much of the time since they shared vows in the summer of 1984 had disintegrated. But his love for the children never waned, and Holton complained that his ex-wife had kept the youngsters from him. On November 30, however, he persuaded her to let him keep them for the day. When he picked them up in Murfreesboro, Brent and Kayla handed him a drawing according to investigators' notes. From Brent and Kayla, "I love you, Daddy," was scrawled on the drawing. After stopping at a McDonald's, the father drove the kids to Shelbyville to the Blue Metal Building on North Jefferson. About 7:30 p.m., Holton said he called his 2 oldest children, Stephen and Brent, to the rear of the shop, telling the boys he had something to show them. At the front of the shop, Eric, who was hearing impaired, and Kayla played unaware of the danger. Holton stood the younger boy directly behind his older brother. "Don't peek," he said. With Christmas less than a month away, perhaps the boys thought their father had purchased an early gift for them. Holton assumed the bent knee firing position behind them, pointing the barrel of an SKS semi-automatic rifle, a Russian-made infantry carbine, with an effective range of 4,000 feet at Brent's back. When he pulled the trigger, the projectile punched through the boys' chests, and they crumpled to the floor. Holton fired 2 other rounds to make sure they were dead. He hid their bodies beneath a tarp, then called the 2 youngest children. Holton told police he made Eric and Kayla shut their eyes as they stood in like fashion to their dead siblings now hidden beneath the plastic just a few feet away. Holton again dropped to one knee. The medical examiner later said death was instantaneous. Police said he fired additional rounds to make sure Eric and Kayla were dead. They didn't suffer, Holton assured investigators. There was no enjoyment to it at all. His plan changed. After stacking the bodies and cleaning up, Holton turned on a police radio to make sure no one reported hearing the gunshots. Then he drove toward Murfreesboro, planning to kill his ex-wife, her boyfriend, and other family members. The coup de grace would be his suicide. But after arriving in Murfreesboro, resolve inexplicably failed him. "When I got past Christiana, I decided I wasn't going to kill myself at the shop. I decided I was going to turn myself in," he told officers. About 9:15 p.m., with the children's bodies nearby, Holton said he smoked a joint of marijuana, got into his car, and drove about 7 blocks to the Shelbyville Police Department, September 13, 2007. The execution of Daryl Holton, which was carried out at 1:16 a.m. Wednesday, was unremarkable in that it killed Holton swiftly and efficiently, and likely without causing Holton any pain or suffering, according to the state medical examiner who performed Holton's autopsy. Dr. Bruce Levy, the chief state medical examiner, performed a 90-minute autopsy on Holton just hours after Tennessee Department of Correction officials pronounced Holton dead at 1:25 a.m. Wednesday. Holton opted to be executed by way of the state's electric chair and became the first person to be put to death by electrocution in Tennessee since 1960. The chair used to kill Holton had never before been used outside of its regular voltage tests. But despite worries from many, including the chair's builder, Fred A. Leuchter Jr., that the device would not work properly, or even if it did, would fail to execute someone humanely, Holton appears to have felt little to no pain, and appears to have been the recipient of enough electricity to kill him during the first surge of 750 volts of electricity, both Levi and media witnesses to the execution said on Wednesday. In Mr. Holton's case, the electrocution process appears to have occurred correctly, Levy said. The electrocution itself, how the process went, the time frame of it, as well as the autopsy, showed nothing unremarkable in any way. Final autopsy reports, including the results of blood tests, are still a few weeks away, Levy said. But on Wednesday morning, Levy was able to determine that the cause of Holton's death was high-voltage electrocution defined by the medical examiner's office as greater than 1,000 volts. The electric current caused Holton to undergo cardiac arrest, Levy said. In this case, it actually stopped his heart, he said. Levy said Holton sustained first to second-degree burns on his head and his ankles, which served as the contact points for the current. That was not an unexpected finding, Levy said. The burn marks around his head and his legs were very similar to a severe sunburn. The burns were caused by the generating of heat produced by the electricity, Levy said, adding that the burns would have emerged toward the end of the electrocution cycle. A number of media witnesses who observed Holton's execution said that Holton appeared sleepy and sedated while being strapped into the chair. Corrections Department spokeswoman Dorinda Carter said Holton was not medically sedated in any way. She said he had been hyperventilating prior to being placed in the chair and was given a few minutes to catch his breath. Levy said the symptoms described by the witnesses, including a bobbing head, yawning, droopy eyelids, and slurred speech, could be shown by a person who had just hyperventilated. Hyperventilation is a possible explanation for what people observed, he said. If you try to hyperventilate yourself, you might not be able to do it to the extent he did, but you can feel yourself getting a little bit lightheaded as a result of it. Still, Levy's office will be conducting blood tests to be sure he was not under the influence of any drugs or medication. And Levy said an instant analysis of Holton's urine showed no signs of any type of sedative agent or other drug. All the blood tests are pending, but I did perform a rapid screen on his urine here this morning, and that was negative. And that looks for 8 different classes of drugs, which includes a lot of the major sedatives, Levy said. The negative urine test is reassuring, but we're going to wait until we get the formal blood test results before have any final say on that. Wednesday, 09/12/07. Convicted murderer Daryl Keith Holton was put to death in the electric chair this morning at Riverbend Maximum Security Institution in Nashville. Holton, 45, was the first death row inmate electrocuted in Tennessee since 1960. The former mechanic and Gulf War veteran had been on death row since 1999 after a Bedford County jury convicted him of fatally shooting his 3 sons, ages 12, 10, and 6, and the 4-year-old daughter of his ex-wife. Holton was pronounced dead at 1:25 a.m., said Department of Corrections spokeswoman Dorinda Carter. Before the executioner sent 750 volts of electricity coursing through Holton's body, the warden Ricky Bell asked the convicted killer if he had any last words. Holton replied, yeah, 2 words, I do. None of Holton's family members attended the execution, and neither did his ex-wife, Crystal Holton. But a victim liaison with the state attorney general's office read a statement from her. Today, all the anger, hatred, and a long time of nightmares can finally leave me, the ex-wife's statement read. It will be replaced by all the sweet, innocent, wondrous love that only a child can give. And I am blessed that I have and always will have that love times 4. In her statement, Crystal Holton also expressed sorrow for a much-loved ex-mother-in-law. Marie has not only had to deal with the death of 4 grandchildren, but now is dealing with the death of her own son. You are in my thoughts and prayers. You will always be a mother figure for me. I still love and miss you very much. After killing the children in November 1997, Holton surrendered to Shelbyville police and confessed. Prosecutors said he killed the children because he was angry with his ex-wife for not allowing him to see them as much as he wanted. Holton refused to participate in his appeals. During the past few years, however, he asked Nashville defense attorney David Rabin to witness the electrocution and to protect his rights during the execution process. Rabin said Holton walked to the electric chair with dignity. This morning, Daryl Holton is free from the demons that have haunted him, Rabin said. When the blinds inside the death chamber were opened at 1:09 a.m., the media witnesses saw Holton already strapped in the electric chair. He yawned several times and appeared to have been sedated, they said. But prison officials said Holton had not been drugged. He was hyperventilating as he was brought into the execution chamber, Carter said. The warden gave him a minute or so to try and catch his breath, so what you all were seeing was the effects of him hyperventilating and him trying to calm down. His hands were fastened to the arms of the chair and straps crossed over his shoulders and his upper body. In the same way a pilot is secured, said Scott Couch, a reporter and anchor with WZTV Fox 17 News, who was a witness to the execution. Holton's ankles were also restrained. Prison official immersed a large sponge in saline solution and put it in what looked like an old-fashioned football helmet and placed it on Holton's head, Couch said. Water from the sponge dripped on Holton's shirt, and 2 security guards with towels moved to dry him. Holton appeared to tell them not to worry about it. Prison officials then placed a small leather shroud over Holton's head and snapped it shut over his face, Couch said. Holton got the first jolt of electricity at about 1:16 a.m. A violent jerking that left the inmate rising up and grabbing the arms of the chairs with his fingers. He was shocked again a second time, and witnesses saw Holton jerk up again in the chair. I don't think any of us can say whether he felt pain, Couch said. About 40 people stood outside the prison protesting the execution, but many of them had resigned themselves to the fact that Holton was going to die. We want it to be as humane and painless as possible, said Stacy Rector, executive director of the Tennessee Coalition to Abolish State Killing. A group of lawyers filed a motion with the Tennessee Supreme Court on Tuesday trying to prevent the execution, but the state's highest court refused to intervene. State law allows death row inmates who committed their crimes before 1999 to choose their method of execution, lethal injection, or the electric chair. Holton chose the chair. Still, the use of the chair is troubling to some of the most ardent death penalty supporters. One victim's rights advocate said she didn't like the idea of using the chair to execute people, even though Holton certainly deserved death. "I wish that they would only have lethal injection," said Verna Wyatt of You Have the Power. "I don't think that the execution is about vengeance. It's about justice, and I personally do not see any reason to have a horrific death, even though he committed a horrific act." I think it's incredibly sad that we have to have the death penalty, but Daryl Holton murdered 4 little kids. And the law is that if you step over the line of human decency, the death penalty is an option, and he certainly fits that criteria. May 29, 2006. The Shelbyville man who killed his 3 sons and a stepdaughter in November 1997 has said he's willing to die for his crimes. And the Tennessee Supreme Court has set September 19 as his new execution date. Daryl Keith Holton, 45, shot the children in an auto shop where he'd been living. Holton has become the subject of legal sparring between the state attorney general's office and a state office established to be sure death row inmates have adequate legal counsel. On May 15th, Holton filed a response of his own to the attorney general's office, which on May 10th had requested a new execution date. Holton stated that he does not oppose the state's motion to reset an execution date according to a state Supreme Court order issued late Thursday. Holton's statement prompted a flurry of legal filings from attorneys who stepped forward to defend death row inmates, but Thursday, the state Supreme Court ruled. Such efforts for a federal order to stop Holton's execution were preceded by several in state courts, some here in Shelbyville. Post-conviction defender Donald Dawson has said that Holton shouldn't be executed because he's not competent, evidenced by his refusal to speak with anyone other than his mother. Discussion among state Supreme Court justices indicated a belief that some inmates are willing to accept punishment for their crimes. Holton, 45, divorced his wife Kreisel in 1993 after she became pregnant by another man. Reconciliation had failed. He concluded that his children's lives were ruined because they'd be raised in a broken home, so he killed them. He planned to go to Rutherford County and kill their mother and himself, but realized if he died, he couldn't explain himself, so he surrendered to police in Shelbyville. A June 8, 2005 execution date had been set in Holton's case, but it was put on hold nearly 1 year ago by Senior Judge Don Harris, who presided over Holton's case here on May 16, 2005. In their May 10th request to the Supreme Court for a new execution date, Solicitor General Michael E. Moore and Jennifer L. Smith, Associate Deputy Attorney General, said Dawson's request to Harris was late and wasn't supported by Holton, so that failed, and his request for relief in the federal courts should also fail for the same reasons. And that was the horrifying case of Daryl Keith Holton, a father who turned his own children into victims of his rage. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the darkest monsters live within the walls of a home, not in the shadows outside. If this story shocked you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping, true crime cases. Because behind every crime lies a story that demands to be told.